Ronnie, how you doing? How's it doing, Chief?
Good, how are you?
Good.
This is an agenda item, Ruby brought an exhibit, so you can pass it down. That's the Caliche names under
You
the.
got other courts with goat?
Huh?
You have a court still with goat or what?
Nah.
That's the caliche and not a piece of concrete?
Yeah, that's Caliche. That's what we have to dig at the cemetery. But we'll discuss it when we get to the agenda item, just give it to you so you have a chance to
Yeah,
look at
we're
it.
under 10 seconds now. Watching
I thought you were trying to sell it as a
4,
medium.
3,
Yeah.
2, 1. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our February Town Council meeting. I will start with our roll call. Councilmember Tomerlin.
Present.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Here.
Councilmember Byrd. Here. Councilmember Lance.
Here.
And I am present. We do have a quorum. Let the record know that Vice Mayor Alonso and Councilmember Navarrete are excused tonight. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all here together safely. Thank you for caring and protecting our staff and our council and everyone who leads in our community and the many volunteers. Protect all of our residents as we, go into the next few weeks of winter. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, we don't have any special presentations tonight, so I'm going to roll right into my mayor's report. I do want to thank the Copper Box for their recognition of the town of Superior for being supportive of the robotics program. And many people may be wondering that, yes, we do have an elementary school robotics program that is funded entirely by Resolution Copper, but that funding comes to the town of Superior as part of our Regional Economic Development Agreement, which we approved in 2023, actually. And so Kathy Summers and Eliana, her name escaped me, they actually run this program. The town provides them space. They also work with the chamber as well, and this is giving our students some robotics opportunities, which we know are so important to the workforce of the future. So they did present us with this nice medal and the certificate, and this is their second year. We had robotics in our schools a while back, and they canceled that program, but now we have it back, and this is part of the first LEGO robotics program, which is really quite a rigorous program for students to participate in robotics. So thank you to our students for presenting us with this and bringing this to Town Hall. We're very proud of all of their initiatives. So this little recognition that we received, I'll pass that around so everybody can see it. They had their competition. Tomorrow, our AmeriCorps, they leave for Maricopa and Casa Grande. It was great to have them for 5 weeks. I want to thank all the clubs and organizations that helped to host them. I know that we have lots of residents too that brought them snacks and took care of them, and makes us one of the stellar host sites for AmeriCorps. But they're moving on. They worked at the Arboretum for 2 weeks. They worked for Lost for 2 weeks, and they worked for the town for a week, right?
Yes.
And if you guys haven't been out to the Picket Post Trailhead, they're actually expanding the parking for horse trailers, and so some of the work that they did for Lost was building the trail from that extended parking area out into the main trailhead. And I hiked with them on Monday, and it's only a half a mile, but it's actually kind of rigorous because you're going up and down. So, thank you for that. That's big work that we were able to get done, especially as the Forest Service is expecting additional loss of staff, even though they were funded for more staff. So just keep an eye on that, everyone. We have some exciting news. The High, part of IDIA, is going to be setting up here in Superior. I want to thank Nick and his team in Rebuild Superior for working on all of that, and announcements will be out soon, but this is going to be a complete with telemedicine rooms, high-tech learning opportunities, computers, 3D printers, podcast equipment. The list goes on and on. This is going to be an incredible resource for our community, and it's funded through another nonprofit in conjunction with Rebuild Superior and our work that we've been doing. So that's a very exciting new addition to the multi-gen. I know everybody's been feeling very perplexed and bothered. We're all feeling the rigors of the bridge closures, but I want everybody to know that we have been in contact with ADOT trying to improve the communication, but also making sure that Superior and the communities affected do not get left out in the mix, because this has been very painful for our businesses. So I want to make sure that everybody remembers to shop local as much as possible, because the messaging is just not getting out there that our communities are still open for business. And then, of course, we have our Main Street paving. There's a lot of construction going on in town. I don't think we've ever had this much construction happening in Superior all at one time, but things seem to have kicked off nicely for the Panther Bridge construction, and that's going to be a nice addition. But then our Main Street paving, and I want to thank our staff for convening a meeting with the downtown business owners on Tuesday and talked a lot about how this procedure is going to go. We're doing a lot to make sure that this work is done in a mindful way, in an efficient way, so it doesn't impact our businesses too much. And that's why I just remind everyone to please shop local. We've had businesses that have been shut down because of some plumbing issues. So, you know, that's how we can do our best for our community, and it's trying to stay positive. I think that is a critical thing from what I've been seeing all over the place, is that we all need to try to be a little bit nicer to each other. And I think it would make the stress level go down just a little bit. Mr. Pryor, do you have anything else to add?
Just the only other project that's really progressing right at the moment is the Queen Creek fuels modifications. Those are working in the US 60 park, and I would encourage everyone to drive down Old Phoenix Road. If you haven't been there for a while, it will be surprising. You can see all the way from Old Phoenix Road to the playground without many obstructions. So it's going to really open that area up, help us with the transient population down in there, help us with fire fuel mitigation. Our fire breaks, according to our fire marshal, have already stopped 2 fires in the last few years. So they are effective, they are working, and we are going to continue working that plan.
Thank you.
Hey, could you remind me again when Panther Bridge is expected to be completed?
For you, Mr. Lamb, as soon as possible, but probably not till the end of April. So we can hope for earlier, but we do also need some rain. So let's just all anticipate an end of April ribbon cutting.
All of us Southsiders are looking forward to that.
Hey, I will admit that yesterday I was going to go leave somewhere, and I was like, oh no, I can't go there. And I was coming home one night, and I was like, oh, no, I gotta go. I still got a little bit further to go before I get home. So thank you, everybody, for your patience. We know that construction is not fun to deal with, but these are good investments for our community. And I want to point out one more thing, even though most of you probably already know this. The Main Street project, it has been over a decade since Superior had this money. It's $1 million project. We should all be very proud of the infrastructure dollars that are coming into Superior. Our staff has worked very hard for all of this. And the least we could do is be very nice and say that our community is going to be stronger and better and safer because of these improvements. So, you know, we all need to be good messengers of this. All that money has been going to Gila County and other communities, and Superior hasn't received a dime in over 10 years. So thank you, because it takes a lot of our staff time to advocate and have everything ready to go, so when somebody else's project falls through, we get that money. Okay, with this, I'm going to move on to consent agenda, and council, I'm going to recuse myself from voting on the consent agenda because I am gainfully employed by the Copper Corridor Economic Development Coalition, and there is an item on that agenda. So I'll read the consent agenda, but I am not going to vote. Consent agenda tonight is approved minutes of special town council meeting on January 9th, 2025. Approval of Town of Superior alcohol beverage permit for Kathy and John McDaniel for a memorial luncheon located at the Magma Club on Saturday, February 8th, 2025, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Approval of Town of Superior alcohol beverage permit for Loli Garcia for a birthday party located at the Magna Club on Saturday, March 1st, 2025, from 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. Approval of Town of Superior alcohol permit for Peligrosos Card Club, Mario Lopez and Angela Villaverde for the Nacho Villaverde Cornhole Tournament for scholarships located at Bestage Park on Sunday, April 13th, 2025, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Approval of Arizona Department of Liquor License and Control special event license for Dubasar Suzanne Superior Optimist Club for Magma Real Casino Night located at the Magma Club 34 Cumpkey Court, Superior, Arizona 85173 on Saturday, April 5th, 2025 from 4 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. Approval of Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses and Control special event license for Tatum Sidney Hansen, Boyce Thompson Southwestern Arboretum located at Boyce Thompson Southwestern Arboretum 37615 East Arboretum Way, Superior, Arizona 85173 on Sunday, April 6th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Approval of sponsorship of $6,000 to the Copper Corridor Economic Development Coalition for the Farm to Fantastic Farmers Market for 2025, and approval of quote from Bingham Equipment Company for a 2025 Bobcat S770 skid steer loader in the amount of $72.20 for Public Works and our department reports. And at this time, I'm recusing myself, so somebody else will need to motion and second and vote.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Councilmember Byrd and a second by Councilmember Tomlin. All in favor?
Aye.
And there's no opposed. I have recused myself. Motion approved. All right, we're going to move on to some agenda items. Agenda item discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 2025-196, an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Superior amending Article 9-15 Town Cemetery of the Superior Code by amending Section 9-15-4, which is requiring a 5-day notice for grave to be done. Staff recommends approving this ordinance. This would require a 5-day notice in order to prepare the plot for burial. And council, as we know, we approved some new cemetery regulations a few years ago, but as we know, our ground is very hard and difficult. This is an example. We have very limited public works staff, so we oftentimes need to do more hand digging because of the way our graves are set up, and that is why we need to give our staff more time, 5 days, to make sure the grave is properly dug and the site is cleaned up and ready to go. And that way we can maintain graves that people have purchased, that they can bury their loved ones in the place that they requested, but we do need the 5-day notice. But council, at this time, if you have any questions or comments to direct to staff, this is the time.
I have some concerns with the 5-day notice. The first part says 5 days, but in the ordinance it says 5 working days. My concerns are with the holiday, let's say over Thanksgiving, that can be an excessive amount of time when people are grieving and trying to wrap things up for a funeral. I'm not opposed to changing the days or adding an additional day in there, but I think that we need to add some provisions in there that allow for them to seek other alternatives if that timeline doesn't work for them. So I think we need to have a little bit of accommodation in there to be able to allow them to find another excavator, whether we want to give them a vetted list or whatever the case may be. I've researched and looked at several other city-owned cemeteries, and none of them have an ordinance that specifies a day timeline of when we can do it. And I understand our business side, but I think we also need to look at the personal side of it, of the grieving families and wanting to wrap things up, and also some cultural and religious aspects, because some of these religions require them to be buried in a certain time frame because they don't do preservative. So I would like to make a motion to table that at this time, pending some provisions in here that can accommodate some of our residents, because I think 5 days could be a little bit much for some people.
Okay, I just want to remind council there's a motion on the floor at this time, so barring a second, we can still maintain open discussion, or staff, if you would like to provide any information. But there is a motion on the floor at this time to table. Go
Sure. The reason for this requirement being lifted is, number one, I don't think we've ever dug a grave in 2 days, ever. I don't think anyone else has come in and dug a grave in 2 days, ever. We get into the caliche, it's very difficult to dig. That's one element. There's also just the simple fact of processing the paperwork, doing the site location. All of that prep work takes a day. So if we say 2 days and we're going to have it done, they come in on a Friday, they want to bury somebody on Sunday, it's just not possible. So we have the public works director here, we have the clerk here, they deal with this a lot more than I do. But like I said, I don't think I've ever seen us dig a grave in 2 days. I think the fastest has been 3 or 4. Just because of the difficulties we have with the age of the grave is also, you know, if we leave it wide open, yes, if they are in a new section of the cemetery where there's nothing around it and we can get a big backhoe in there, and we can dig it quite quickly. If their family bought it 20 years ago, it's in the old section of the cemetery, it's surrounded on all sides, it has concrete built over top of it, and they're digging by hand with jackhammers, it's a week dig minimum. So I don't know if there's a better way to word that, but we do have, again, the public works director. He can talk to the practical needs for a longer window. And I do think that our cemetery has special problems because of essentially it sits on a bed of concrete. When you go to try to dig a grave, you go down 2 feet, you're fine. If it's a cremation, you're fine. If you have to dig a vault, which is a concrete slip that goes in there, that you have to dig it all the way out to the perimeter. It's huge. It has to be perfectly square. You're digging it into concrete. There's just no way to do that in a day. And that's literally what we're talking about. Because they come in one day, you have to dig it the next day and be ready for the funeral the day after that. It's just not possible.
And I'm not disputing any of that with staff. I understand that. I mean, I've worked in construction, we do trenching, the same thing. What I'm asking for is that it also takes it away from some of us as a responsibility if it is a religious thing. They don't do, any of that. Is there some implications that somebody could come back and sue us because we had that 5-day window, or now it incurred extra charges at a mortuary that the body was sitting there because we couldn't do it within 5 days? I'm just asking that we add something that gives them the option, because the policy as it states right now is the town must do the work. So it doesn't leave any window of opportunity for them to say, okay, we can't meet this guideline for you, but here are some options that you can seek, and if they can do it quicker for you, then by all means, then that's an option.
I think some of those areas, they're hard to get into, and it's even harder to dig. I think it's taken us, I think maybe about 2.5 days. That was with help. I mean, I think 5 days is, I think it's generous. I understand your opinion, but I think it's kind of what's needed in order to get it done. But I think there should always be, if you look at it, it's an easy dig. It's not going to take 5 days. If you look in there, you're going to have to hand dig it. It's going to be at least 5 days.
But according to this, we're stuck at 5 days, and in our policy it says 5 working days, but here it's saying 5 days. So are we going on?
We can change that language to say 5 working days if you want to reflect that in the motion. What I would say is there's nothing in this policy that says we can't dig it faster if we are capable of digging it faster. This just says that we will only guarantee that we'll have the grave done in 5 days, because people come in, what's happening here is they go to the mortuary, they make all the funeral arrangements, they buy the casket, they talk to the preacher, and they set that up, and then a week after they've started the planning, they come talk to us and say, okay, we need it next Saturday, and it's Thursday night. So we want them to understand that we need to get the notice because we have to do the work. And it's not just that it takes 5 days to dig it. If we drop everything, we put the whole crew on that. What if the wastewater treatment plant blows a pump? What if the, we have an imminent deadline for a grant, we have to get it done? The Public Works only has 5 guys. They have to shift them around. So that the Public Works Director needs to have some flexibility to be able to schedule. But again, there's nothing in this that says we can't dig it faster. And yes, it says we have to get the grave dug, but we can, doesn't mean we have to go out and physically dig it ourselves. We have authorized people to come in and dig the graves. What we have to do is make sure that the paperwork is filed, that they have a certificate allowing them to bury that person there. That Ruby has made sure that if they want to dig it next to their family member or dig it and put it in Nana's grave when they're not Nana, that the family is signed off on it. All that paperwork sometimes takes days, because if you want to, say your mother's buried somewhere and you want to put your nephew's remains on top of your mother, all of your mother's heirs have to sign off on that, notarized. And sometimes there's 10 siblings. That could take a week just there. But we want to make sure, again, if we can dig it faster, we'll dig it faster. But we want to make sure that when they come in and they start yelling at Ruby, you say it says 2 days. I want to have my funeral on Saturday. I know it's Thursday night, but I'm giving you 2 days notice. Get out there and dig it. That we have some recourse to say, look, yes, we are going to do our best to get this done for you, but we can't guarantee it's going to be done on Saturday. It's just not physically possible.
And the only thing that I'm saying in argument to that is that it's stating here all grave openings shall be prepared by the town. So to give us some pushback to say, here's a list of contractors, if they can do it for you, there you go, you're fine. So that gives us some pushback too, because I do understand that it can take 3 days, it can take 5 days, it can take more than that, just depending on where it's at. And again, like you said, in those smaller areas where you have to get maybe a mini-X in there, you have to hand dig it. I understand that, but I think that we need to have a little bit in here where we can say too, we're having a little grace for them, because a lot of times this is the worst time of their life that they're trying to deal with. And I think having a little bit of grace and having something in there to say, unfortunately, we as the town can't do that for you. This is the timeline that we have, but here are some other options and alternatives, and somebody else can do it for you. That's all I'm asking. Not saying to squash it completely, not saying that we shouldn't do 5 days, even 3 days, 4 days, but we should have some other provisions in there to allow for them to seek an alternative, because the way it's stated right here is they do not have an alternative, that it's totally done by the town.
I would also say too that there used to be a lot of contractors in town that you could call up and they'd bring a backhoe out and they would do something for you. That's getting a lot more limited. I don't know of anyone actively renting out or doing backhoe work for anyone in town. So you'd be bringing a contractor in from out of town, which is doable, but it would radically increase the expense. We are charging for open close. We can waive those fees, but if we are charging $800 for open close, and they're going out and spending $2,000 to have somebody dig the grave, yeah, we waive the fee, but it's still going to cost them more if they're bringing them from out of town. If there was a list of people in town that were willing to do this work, again, we've tried to find people. When we were booked, we have tried to call people and say.
I have a quick question
Sure.
before this, because I see Councilmember Bird's point in having these options and giving people some grace. And granted, if you really want something done, you'll find the money and you'll pay for it. My question though is, when we get in those tough spots, right? There's some of these graves where they're all put together, and some of the complaints that we sometimes field is, there was a funeral next to my Nana's grave, and when the town dug the grave, you broke the concrete, and so broke this, or this fell off. My concern is that, we tried to get our staff to be very mindful, very caring, understand the cemetery is an important place. We started, we're like, okay, here's these certified contractors. What is our liability to any of that? And I know that your grave is like the last piece of real estate you ever own, and that's why there's all those complexities. But I just wanna be mindful of that, because now we're even talking about like not having those, you know, contractors in town that have that Midas touch to some things, and they understand that, so they bring in, you know, Bob from AJ or wherever, or my cousin's gonna go do it, and then, oh, you get tired and you knock something over, and we lose kind of some of those controls in sense of making sure that we're respectful of the other people that are buried there. But I kind of think like, you know, we have to share that. I think the other option is like the Globe option, saying, well, if you want something sooner and your grave's here, then you have to pick one of these sites over here. Like, you're gonna have to pick this where we think we can dig it faster, but, you know, I think we really have to be mindful and make sure that we're protecting our staff. I'm open to more discussion on this and tabling it, but I'm not sure how we fix it exactly.
It seems like right.
Ruby, why don't you go up to the podium and
Yeah.
look, I've talked a lot, and I don't do this work. Ruby does the work, Nick does the work. I would like them to address those issues.
So in the past, when we have had families that come in and they want their funeral in 3 days or 2 days, and we're already digging another grave or a casket, and these ones come in, they have families they have family members in Superior that own their own backhoes. So Public Works goes out there and they will mark the grave. We also take pictures of the surrounding area to make sure what's there, you know, to make sure nothing gets damaged. And with the guidance of Public Works, we do allow them to dig. They bring in their own backhoe because sometimes they have better equipment than we do. So they bring it in. But under the guidance of Public Works, they can open the grave, but we close it. They
Okay.
do not close it. Cremations right now, we have a lot of families that want to say, can we dig our own? It's a 2 by 2 by 2. Nick goes out there and we mark it and we allow them to dig. We cover.
Okay.
Public Works is out there to make sure that the urn is placed in the grave. When we do that, they have to sign a paper saying that their family, I have it, it's notarized, is responsible for the opening of the grave for such and such a person on grave number such and such on this day. The town of Superior or Public Works or myself will not be responsible for the opening of the grave on that day. We will be responsible for the closing, and if they notarize it.
Okay, I think what's going on is, it doesn't say that in the
In the policy,
policy, so
the ordinance.
we're assuming, okay, then they have no choice, but they do have a choice, but it's
If
not,
they can find
it's,
somebody to.
yeah, but it's not in the policy, so that's what our concern is. It's not so much the 5 days, my concern is also that, but it's not in the policy. If it was there, then we could say, well, it's here, you can do it, but,
And
you know.
it's very few have done it.
Yeah,
But now
and I
it's
understand that, but I think what we're saying is, let them have the option.
Yes,
And we have no problem with that, but like I said, it's not in here.
I
And with the
don't-
ordinance, if you guys left, if, say all the staff, we got a whole new staff, and then they're, okay, we gotta go by the ordinance, so then that makes it difficult, well, so-and-so did it before, well, if we have new staff in place, this ordinance stands as stated, and they don't know what they did before. So that's my concerns of just making some provisions to this, not squashing it, just making some provisions to making it open for them to be able, it's black and white. Yes, you can do this, there's no question to it. If you wanna pay $5,000 to do it, that's fine. If it works for you, then it works for you.
I would throw up a few cautions about this entire conversation. If we're gonna do this, it would be very picky because, okay, so you go out, and it says in the policy you can go bury somebody. So you go out and your family owns the grave. You're like, oh, we'll just go out and we'll have a party and we'll bury him. Or there's no certificates, there's no record of it, we don't know about it. You have to come to town hall, you have to fill out the proper forms. If they say they want to dig it, then Ruby helps them figure out how to do that. We don't want to encourage them or randomly allow people to step into the cemetery without going through the proper channels.
Well, I mean, there could be some verbiage on there upon
They still have to
approval
come
from
in to
town.
town
Yes.
hall and fill out the paperwork, and they work with the public works director.
Yeah.
He will still mark it, and they
Yeah,
still under his
everything
guidance.
stays, it
Yes.
just put there on this paper says, hey, okay,
Well,
that's it.
I
That's it.
think maybe even lining out in the policy, should a self-dig approach be taken, the following steps must be taken. It must be recorded with the deed to the grave, and that's the photos and all of those things. Because again, we're talking about what we're doing right now and it works, and I appreciate that our staff goes above and beyond to try to keep things moving along, and some, I know there are days when you guys are, when Ruby has people waiting because there's so many funerals that line up one at a time, and I know we've had those seasons, and it's very tough on the staff. It's very, you know, you gotta dig the grave, you gotta do all this paperwork, and that's this important work that they have to stay mindful of. So I wanna thank you guys for working through all of that, and to make sure that we preserve this in our culture and our community, that we line out how we're doing this, how we're allowing that to happen, but that there is that certification process, like you have to do this, you have to do that, because I think the last thing we want is feel like, oh, I can circumvent a process and I'm just gonna, because I think my Theo bought that grave, and I know because there's some situations in my adjacent family that, there are people that will not get buried because what one person wants and the rest of the family does not agree to, so they cannot cultivate the paperwork. So, I wanna make sure we protect ourselves now and well into the future.
If I may, Mayor.
Yes.
What brought this about is, the grave that we're discussing, that they asked us to complete within 2 days was in an open area where we can actually get equipment. I mean, it couldn't get any better. The ground, the example that you see on the table, it took 3 days. So the only reason it took 3 days is because I got put in a spot where when we met the family out there, they called us out on our policy, which says 2 days, 48 hours, or whatever it says. And I got put in a bad spot because I've seen my guys dig, I've seen our equipment dig, I've seen what they go through digging these graves. And I knew instantly when she said, she gave me the date, and I said, not happening. And she said, well, your documentation says this. And I said, Ruby, does it say that? She says, yes. And I got put in a bad predicament because now I know it's not gonna happen. It's impossible. So what I did is I was like, is there any way that you can give me another day? She said, we have family coming in. And I was like, ma'am, it's not gonna happen. It is too quick a notice. And sure enough, she said, you know what, I can give you one more day. I got family coming in, having them one more day won't be a big deal. And I said, thank you. So I got put in the back spot.
Yeah.
We dug and we dug and we dug with the equipment that we have. The day of the funeral, I had all public works, the entire crew with floodlights on the grave site digging. We finished. We were dressing up the funeral area, the burial area, an hour before, an hour and a half, 2 hours before the arrival of the family. Now, the mortuary arrived while we were still digging. So even if it's in a good spot, with the equipment that we have, it's a struggle. So just to elaborate on the request of time frame, it could be in a great spot, but the equipment that we have is aged. The material we're digging through is difficult. It takes my whole crew, and I'm putting my whole crew on something because I know, I've been told, I recognize how emotional the cemetery can be to people. And like Councilmember Burton said, it's we should give them, you know, the opportunity, the privilege.
I think it should stay at 5 days, like you said, but there should be able to, if they can and they want to, be able to have that choice. That's all. Yeah, this 5 days is a good thing. I'm just saying, if they say, well, you know what, I can, you know, come in and do all the work that you said, get it all done, and get their own excavation, then, you know, it doesn't, then it takes it away from us because we've already gone through all that. It's right there in black and white. And like you said, right now in black and white, 2 days isn't enough.
So as soon as
So
they
we
come
know
in
that.
and want to dig their own grave, I call in Nick ASAP, and he
Yeah.
comes into the office, so we meet with the family.
Yeah.
And another situation that's happened, and maybe we can elaborate on this, is sometimes when they schedule with a mortuary from out of town, and they need to come, before we put equipment in the ground, somebody from that family needs to come in and sign paperwork, and sometimes,
Verify the grave.
and verify where the location
They
is,
don't.
and they won't show up. And,
Then they got another 5 days, they gotta wait till they get everything done.
and there's been one incident where I think it was like, finally we got them to show up, 2 days or 3 days before digging, and luckily we got that one done, because it was in a different area.
Well, I want to recap some of the concerns council has. One, some verbiage and language added into the policy around the option to dig your own grave.
One point, our attorney has been raising issues with this, so there's going to be problems with in liability. There's going to be problems with the fact that, you know, if they're hand digging, if they don't know what they're doing, anything over 4 feet you have to shore or you have to taper back. This is a massive liability, so the attorney will have to look at this and see if that's something we can adopt or not. I have no opinion on the matter. We've allowed it in the past, but if we're going to write it in policy and it becomes official and it becomes the rule of the land, it's going to have to be properly vetted, and I don't know that it's going to pass vetting. So just fair warning. Now, my request to the council is the 5-day window and the other options are not necessarily linked issues. I mean, yes, digging grave is a nice option we can offer people, but it doesn't change the reality that 2 days isn't working for us. So we have to change it to some higher number to give us enough time. And yes, we'll try to work on more options if we can get something that makes legal sense.
Why do we need to have a timeline in there then?
We
If
can
they're
eliminate
going
the
out there
timeline
and
completely.
looking, like most other ordinances that I've seen from other cities and towns, because I looked at several, didn't have a timeline. So are we shooting ourselves in the foot by adding these days in there? Can we omit that and say, we will review, and Nick can go out there with his guys and say, hey, what do you think about this area? And then at that point, we can advise the family, hey, it's gonna take us this long, but you have these other options if you choose to seek an alternative. That might be a better option too, is to remove the timeline of 2 days, 5 days, 7 days. That might be an option too for us.
I didn't occur to me, but that seems like a perfectly reasonable solution, but is that something we can do?
Mayor, council members, tonight you have several options. You could approve it, you could table it, or you could modify the ordinance as you see fit. As far as not having a provision on there, part of that is to prevent basically what I call the end run, basically that if you don't have a time limit of what's in there, you may have these people on your doorstep asking why why you as a council member can't make them stop what they're doing and dig a grave. And so the concern that I have is that having some period in there basically gives us the ability to plan it, to be able to make it work. As the mayor pointed out, Bob the backhoe guy, I remember him because he used to cut the fiber line between here and here through Superior, Kearney, and the other areas there, and I would be up there in those towns and have no way of calling out when I'd be up there just because the person just didn't know what he was doing. Are they going to have appropriate liability insurance out there? Should someone not pay attention, put a wheel in that hole and tip over and injure someone or damage an adjacent grave? If you wanted to have some language in there, you could basically take the language out, or you could basically change work days to 5 days, or Todd would probably kick me for saying this, we could say that other arrangements may be made at the discretion of the town manager, which basically would give them an opportunity to try to work on some other alternatives. And the only other comment I would tell you is that because of Superior's history, you know, when we had the mining, when mining was booming, when mining went bust, and a lot of the families had to disperse because they had to make a living, trying to get the family to come back for a funeral in this community sometimes it could be a 1 or 2 week process, just because the fact that people have moved and they can't get back here on time, and trying to coordinate everybody to come at one time is also, is going to be an issue. But it is your community, these are your regulations, and certainly we want to do what we can to basically try to help them. I can tell you that when Ruby calls and they say she's got a cemetery question, basically I kind of cringe for 30 seconds before I pick up the phone, because it's never going to be an easy question. It's always something that's just really, really bizarre, and just because of the facts that are out there and the family dynamics that are involved. But for the most part, I think if you're having a problem out there with the burials out there in the cemetery, believe me, I believe you would have heard about it, up close and personal on it and everything. And so it is a local decision. What I would basically try to tell you is to try to come up with something reasonable. And town staff is always going to try to take every reasonable alternative to try to help somebody in their time of need, so that basically it doesn't become a problem, because it's the right thing to do. And two, basically you don't want to be in a situation where so-and-so, basically they got it done in 2 days, but you're going to make me wait 5, without even addressing all the logistical issues and the equipment issues that we have there. And so I probably talked a lot more than I probably should have, but my concern is that this is like a plumbing issue. I think the tighter we make it, the more it's going to leak on us.
Well, I appreciate our staff's, very, thought out honesty on this, because, we need to protect the town and the policy and the procedure, and protect our staff. I didn't know the thing about the shoring, anything over, that's deeper than 4 feet. And again, these become issues that become even more sensitive and more, creates other unsafe situations. And I think we have to be very mindful of that. My recommendation, and Councilmember, however you feel about this, we do have a motion that's on here to table, but I think if we're going to table this, then we have to give staff some direction on the options that we want to see come back. And I think I kind of like what Cooper said specifically about any special accommodations would have to go through town management. Maybe we just say town management, so our team can triage a little bit, we can assess the matter a little bit, but give that option. The more and more we talk about, Bob's backhoe coming in and doing this, it concerns me, because but we could have that discretion based on what's happening at the management level. I kind of feel like this is a rarity, but I don't think there's any way we can legitimately say. I think we know we're seeing the science of all of this. There's no way to say we can dig a grave in 48 hours. I think that's health and safety risk for our staff and our workers, especially if they're doing this by hand. The realities of our community, we have an aging community, not a community that's getting younger. That means we have some physical limitations probably that we have to also be protective of to protect our staff.
So can we do something to make sure that the 2 days is taken off, and put the 5 days and table the rest of it?
No, because what's the action is right now, if you approve it as is right now, then the situation is as such that we adopt it saying we can only dig a grave within 5 days. It could be sooner, but the staff has 5 days to guarantee that we dig a grave. And that is what the policy says right now. Everything else stays intact from our original cemetery policy. So we can do that. That gives staff immediate, they can start doing this 5-day policy. If we want more verbiage added into that, then we leave the table on the motion. I remind everybody, there's a motion on the table to table, and staff can go in and kind of tweak that verbiage. They take in our feedback from tonight, and then bring us back the policy again, and we can approve that. So
Just a fair warning, this will take a little time to consider. For instance, during my time here, we've hit bodies 4 times, where we were digging a grave and hit bones. Twice, the forest archaeologist came out, determined that it wasn't a crime scene, and released it. But they've stopped being willing to do that because it's on forestry. Technically, it's their jurisdiction. So now they make us bring a medical examiner in to determine whether or not it's a crime scene before we can release that. Having a non-town employee do that is going to be really sticky.
yeah,
So
forgot about that.
there are a lot of issues with our old cemetery that make this really difficult. We've done it on a case-by-case basis because we know who has the experience and the ability to do it. They're all locals, we can vet them. But we haven't just opened the floodgates to let everybody in. It's on a case-by-case basis. So we would have to really be careful with this one. It's sticky. Just
So
fair
staff's recommendation is to keep, staff's recommendation is to, approve this ordinance as it's written, and this would require a 5-day notice in order to prepare the plot for burial.
It
Yeah.
says 5 working days, just to be clear, though, in the ordinance.
Yeah, and
Specific
with that
ordinance
modified
says 5
language, that
working days.
corrected language, yes, please. But also, if the council would like us to draft further clauses, then we would be happy to do that. We'd have to research them and come back with options. And it'd, of course, have to be vetted by our attorney. And again, this one's not gonna be easy. So I was just trying to set expectation. So, I think that, the 5-day thing is a pressing matter which puts our employees in a bad situation. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the rest of it. If we want more options, direct me what options to create and we will create them.
Okay, so I'm gonna remind council, because I think we're getting to the point that action needs to be done. I'm gonna call for the question. Understanding Mr. Pryor's request that the 5-day notice, as the ordinance reads right now, gives our staff the option to build that. If we want more ordinances in place, staff can research that. We've all been fully informed of all the complexities that could bring us into a lot more dangerous liable situations. So there's a motion on the floor to table this, and amend the language. Is there a second?
I don't understand. You're asking for an amendment?
No, right now, the motion on the floor is to table approving this at all.
So
And
we
coming
could-
back to council with,
We could change some of the verbiage without,
There's a motion on the table. It has to be considered or dropped before
yeah,
we
so
can.
the motion that's, I want for the motion that's on the floor, whether we are going to table this or not, to get it, either get a second or no second. So I'm gonna call for that question. Okay, so the current motion to table the ordinance has died for the lack of a second. So now we're gonna come back to what is the action item. This is discussion, possible approval of the ordinance number 225-196. This ordinance would require, would amend the current cemetery ordinance, would require a 5-day notice. It needs to be amended to 5 working day notice. The ordinance says 5 working days, in order to prepare the plot for burial. So if there's a motion to approve this ordinance at this time, then we go through the voting procedure. Somebody can also make a motion to approve this current ordinance and ask staff to do more diligence work on additional things that we've discussed, like, do we allow other people? Right now, staff is handling that at their discretion, managing all the situation and trying to be as mindful and careful as they can. But we're also allowing staff to do that, knowing that there is some liability issues that could backfire, in a bad way, because I've gotten the calls from Todd that says, hey, we went to go dig a grave and we found some bones. this actually looks kind of fresh, it doesn't look too old, like we have to figure this out, and we have to call the medical examiner. And that also, there's things sometimes outside of our control that we have to amend to, and I think having the 5 days protects our staff to at least go back and say in policy, we're doing our best to do it sooner, but here's the complexities. It's not like this is just, you know, we're special in Superior. We have a lot of different complexities we have to be mindful of.
And I have no problem with the 5 days. I just want them to have a choice, and if you could find out how we can do that, I have no problem with that. But we have to be able to, you know, give these people that have something, a chance to be able to, you know, on their grieving time, to be able to do that. And if they can't, then it's understood.
Okay, so
The easiest way to do that, just for reference, some code set says, like for instance, the zoning code says that the town manager cannot make any accommodation not in law. Some of our code sets say the town manager can make any reasonable accommodation. Nothing in this code stops him from doing that. We could draft similar language, so then it puts the onus on me to vet these situations. That is the easiest way to do it. If we lay out all this stuff in detail, we have to make sure we cover all the holes, and it's a lot of holes.
And there's a lot of things that could go wrong. So I'm going to bring this back to council for the moment. You can, my suggested motion would be to approve the ordinance as presented by staff and direct staff to develop the language around giving the manager, you know, management authority to, however Todd said that, I'm sorry, my words are tied. So would somebody like to make that
Sounds good to
motion?
me.
Does that have to be in the ordinance for him to do ahead of time? I mean, does that have to be a part of the ordinance before we can approve that? Because if we're approving it as written, correct? With 5 working days.
We can make amendment, right, in our motion.
You can make an amendment, and you can pass this as is, you can move to pass this ordinance as amended with your changes, and then after you vote, you could direct us to come back with some additional language that's there. We would come back and amend this ordinance. I believe what the town manager is asking is because it currently says 2 days, we would at least like the 5-day breathing room, and if you want some other solutions, give us an opportunity to come up and get them to you, and you can always amend this ordinance to add those to it.
What's the timeline for an amendment?
This ordinance, if it's passed, is effective 30 days after its passage, and it basically, you can amend it at any time, anytime you have a properly noticed council meeting, as long as basically we've got some clear direction on what you're expecting, and we can get language that's acceptable to you. So if, you could basically approve this, have these amendments come at the next council meeting, if we can, basically try to figure out language that will work for everybody.
Good with that.
And to be clear, I haven't looked in the full code set. This is, I generally don't have it all memorized, unfortunately, but it might already be in there, that language. I haven't looked, because it wasn't a question I was considering.
So, one more time. We do have to act on this at some level. The motion to table failed for lack of a second. I'm going to suggest that the motion say that we would approve the 5 working day notice, right? That's what we want, the 5 working days, or just 5 days, because I think you guys do work on weekends, all right, if you need to.
We have, if it's necessary, we do.
If it's necessary, so,
Can we just make it 5 days and not 5 working days?
5 days.
Mr. Pryor?
Whatever the council decides on this matter is fine. 5 days, if it falls on a holiday weekend, is 2 days. So just,
Oh, okay.
The flip side of that, 5 working days, if they come in on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, then you're looking at 11 days.
yes, as a maximum. And again, there's nothing saying we can't dig the grave faster if that's possible. We just don't want to be stuck on the hook. My entire family's gonna be here on Sunday. I already told them to be here. I know it's Saturday, but bring everybody in on
And I just barely
overtime.
showed up because I want to do this, and I feel like in all practicality sense, most funerals are taking a little bit longer to plan because people are now looking for more, better weather, when you can bring all your family. I think we're getting into the minutia of something that in reality, by the time they secure a church, by the time they secure a lot of other things, venue space for luncheons, I don't think anybody can really fully get a funeral. And I know there is some emergency situations, but I think giving our staff, saying, this is kind of urgent to do this 5-day stuff. I know our public works crew is spread very, very thin on a lot of things, and it kind of throws everything off when we have to jump through this. And we don't want to be giving money back because we couldn't do it in 48 hours.
And another thing to consider, like Councilmember Lanta's direct knowledge, the town used to have 12 public works people. Now we have 6, 8 if you count the wastewater treatment plant. We are doing a lot more with a lot less. So, there are emergency situations that come up, and not just the cemetery, they come up all over town. And we're asking a lot of our crew, and we're putting them in front of people who are having the worst day of their life, and making them tell them no. I think we would be better to, not just for our guys, but for the people who come to us, to have some flexibility in there, so they don't have an expectation, and they don't feel slighted if we tell them it's going to take 4 days to dig this grave. If you have a rule set that tells people you're entitled to this, and they're very wrought, and then you tell them we can't do it, they get overwrought. So this isn't just for our crews, it's for everyone's protection.
And I think, a big thing is those 2 holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, where there's those 2 days that hit, and that's why, you're looking at, like she said, 6, 7 days, 8 days. Mortuaries usually, I don't know how, they don't involve them. They want them buried within a certain amount of time. So if we go with this and you got the say so, you can make that change, correct?
If I can make, and again, we'll just make sure it's in code that the town manager can make any reasonable accommodations, then if it's possible to do something, I can approve it.
Okay.
And if it's not possible, we haven't set an expectation to do it anyway.
Right.
So to kind of cover staff, cover these specialty situations, in light of the fact that there is some urgency to this, to protect our staff most importantly, then my recommendation is that we make a motion to approve the 5-day notice versus the 5 working day. I think that's a bit of a concession. We can kind of work on that, because even if somebody comes in on a Thursday, if we know it's going to be tough, we'll kind of have to eat the overtime, I guess, on that. But I think that's at least a fair concession to saying we're going to work on their grave urgently, and then and add in the clause, this is the town manager can make a accommodation if it is possible. And we make the motion as such, try to move on with that, and then as part of the discussion point, we can direct staff to give us more guidance and research on this, because I think it's an important discussion to have. I think we brought up some sensitivities that are important for us to consider, but I think we all have to look at this, that
2 days is not enough.
that we know 2 days is just not enough, it's putting way too much pressure on the staff, it's not humanly possible, and these other things, I think our attorney's given us good guidance that we have to give consideration to, that as easy as it sounds to say like, well, yeah, let's do that, we're really putting ourselves at risk, we're putting other people's property at risk, so.
Another area where this would really help, as the clerk pointed out, one of our friction points is the mortuary. Mortuaries aren't telling them to come early because we only need 2 days notice. So they do all of their bookings, all of their work, and then they send them to town.
So that would help the mortuaries understand that you need at least 5 days in Superior to do this. You need 5 days before they can guarantee that somebody's gonna be buried, especially if it's a full burial.
Sorry, the clerk's saying that if the rules passed and we can update the literature, we can take the rounds to all of the churches and the mortuaries to communicate that to them and say, you do have to involve us up front rather than at the end.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like, that's probably one of the first things. I mean, planning funerals it's not fun. I've had to do several of them and I know it's complex, but, okay. So do we have anybody willing to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a
Yes.
motion. I move to approve the ordinance. Somebody hand me that hard copy, please. Wonders of modern technology, my iPad died. I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2025-196 with the following amendment, striking the word working from the section and making it 5 days, with the adding language that town management may make reasonable accommodations, if so able.
Is there a second to Mr. Tomerlin's motion?
I'll second.
There's a second by Mr. Lant, Councilmember Lant. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. No, I mean, council, that's what we're here for, is to have like discussion, and these are sensitive issues, and that's why we appreciate our staff for giving us all the information. And sometimes what we think is easier and what feels good emotionally is not what we can actually do because liabilities.
This is very representative of what we deal with all cemetery functions. There's always high emotion around the cemetery. So
There's
nothing,
no such thing as a 100% right answer a lot of times when it comes to the cemetery.
yeah.
Nope. And we have one more new business item, and it is also cemetery related, but I think this is a more positive agenda items. Discussion, possible approval of resolution number 2025-689, a resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Superior, Arizona, renaming Fairview Community Cemetery to Superior Veterans and Community Cemetery, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by such rights-of-way dedication and this resolution. This is a town council decision, and the discussion on this. Fairview Community Cemetery will be undergoing significant renovation and expand the cemetery to provide improvements which include a new entrance, the construction of fencing, bathrooms, and improved traffic routes with the boundaries of the cemetery. These improvements would be paid for from a potential grant from an organization that supports veterans. And this is also kind of coming out of some community love from Mr. Cervantes, who we know gives so much of his time and effort, and a retired veteran from Superior, Ernest Urqueta, who kind of brought this to us. In order for some of these funds to continue to flow, we have to add veterans into our naming of our cemetery, so that way it would qualify for the special veterans dollars. We know how important our cemetery is. It's also a place that a lot of people are using to walk and get their exercise at. So maintaining this and improving it is really, really important. And so council, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Aguilar, second by Mr. Tomerlin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And we will proceed on to call to the public. Is there anyone on the list wishing to address the council? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just read the call to the public announcement here. Any citizen desiring to speak on a matter that is not scheduled on this agenda may do so at this time. Comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person and shall be addressed to the town council as a whole and not any individual member. Issues raised shall be limited to those within the jurisdiction of the town council. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting law, the town council cannot discuss or act on items presented at this time. The conclusion of call to the public, individual town council members may 1, respond to criticism made by those who have spoken, 2, ask staff to review a matter, or 3, ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. And we have one listed on the list, and that is Mr. Freddie Miramon. Mr. Miramon, you may come to the podium, please, and I'm going to, just a quick reminder that it's 3 minutes is your comment period.
Mayor, before the clock ticks, would you allow a few additional minutes if needed, that when I have to speak, and I'll cut to the chase?
I want to make sure that we encourage efficiency, and that will be up to my discretion. If I allow you a few extra minutes, I'll let you know.
That's fine. My name is Freddie Miramon, a resident here in Superior, Arizona. And my concern question is, I will give that scenario later on what I have to say. Due to the Queen Creek and Waterfall construction project, traffic volume has increased and speed has also increased and backup traffic has increased. No change of traffic calming down measures will take place during this construction site that's taking place. It is getting more difficult for pedestrians of all ages and abilities to cross the highway to the residents or to one of the businesses located on Highway 60, when most of the coming traffic will not yield to pedestrians trying to cross. I am aware of our town engineer working on the safety issue with ADOT. To my understanding, ADOT would not help out with any safety equipment or safety necessities needed for pedestrians to cross Highway 60 due to the complexity of the 3% fatality ratio that has to meet. I ask that the town of Superior does not stop on this pedestrian crossing safety issue and continue to identify specific strategies and actions to achieve a much needed pedexing pedestrian crossing over the Highway 60. I ask that the town of Superior will look that possibility of maybe of an overhead crossing in the near future, and also to help out to make it possible for these pedestrians, because of the activity they're having because of the businesses, to be able to cross in a safety manner. Now, currently right now what's happening is backup traffic has gone back to Los Hermanos restaurant. I was trying to get across, and I was also watching that pedestrian was waiting to get across, but the traffic would not yield to that pedestrian because it's backed up. When they release traffic coming from the east side going west, traffic is picking up on speed, and this pedestrian was not able to get across, and I was pretty upset about this matter. It's kind of because there's no visible signage that would alert the drivers of a potential pedestrians crossing activity. I think something has to be done to improve it with ADOT or whoever the contractors are, to make it possible that the speed maybe could be lower, one of the key points. And one of the other key points would be is having a visible signage with enhanced markings to alert traffic of pedestrians crossing. Because there's no way, when they're coming down, they're trying to make up time for being delayed to go back to their business or home down in the valley. And also it's causing all these truckers that are coming in, they're coming down real fast on that. So, council members, mayors, I'm just asking that safety is proactive. Quality of life must be first to our residents and visitors while walking on the sidewalk, and those that are attempting to cross the highway. We need an overhead crosswalk. Thank you. Globe has one, and Fort Thomas has one.
Thank you, Mr. Miramon. And since you're here, because we've had that conversation, I want you to be aware that Ms. Svetlana has addressed, I know, me and Mr. Pryor on your request in your meeting. I understand you did meet. This is something that we have been working on. I will tell you that the challenge to get either the Hawk is we have to have the 3%, we have 3% fatalities, and we don't really want any fatalities, and so it's an unfortunate situation. And number two, the equipment or the sleeve is there to make this Hawk if it could ever happen, but they're not looking to do that. And an overhead is likely going to be unlikely because of the grade of our highway and the way, and I know we say Globe has it and Fort Thomas has it, but they have it because they're grandfathered in. We do have a pathway underneath the bridge. It's part of the Lost Trail. I want these safety measures too, but I will tell you that ADOT has pretty much told us their goal is to have a highway that people are not walking on, and that is very unfortunate, but we spent a great deal of time, as I mentioned in my report, talking to ADOT, and this is one of the things that I'm bringing up because of the pain we have been through going through this bridge construction. So I want you to know that we are working on this and we are not ignoring you, so thank you.
Correct. Can I say one thing?
No, I'm sorry, we're going to go to the last call of the public from anyone else in the audience. Yes, Mr. Aguilar.
What do we have to do in order to lower the speed limit coming through?
That's directed to staff. You can direct that to staff and in your council comments, because that's not,
All right.
you're not replying back to that. So, with that being said, is there any other comments from the public at this time? Hearing none, we're going to go to the summary of current events, and we'll start with Mr. Tomerlin.
Just reminding everybody that Apache Leap Days is the last full weekend in March. Should be a great turnout, should be a great time. We went to and did a tour with the water company yesterday. Started at the source of our water and went all the way up to the tank on the hill. It was very, very informative, and it is extremely complicated to get a drop of water here to Superior. So thank you, Arizona Water Company, for that. And everyone, as you go forth, just be safe, and we'll see you at the next one.
Councilmember Aguilar.
So how can we lower the speed limit coming?
You have to deal with the county traffic engineer and the lead engineer. It's not impossible. It's not a simple process to get anything approved through that. We will raise it with them and find out what their process would be. And we've been discussing ADOT issues for many years with the engineers. I think we've been successful in a tiny fraction of our requests, but we will definitely raise that with them and ask.
And I hate to say it, but like Miami, they stop you right away. So when you're going by in Miami, you slow down because you know those guys are out there.
Drive through Hayden, it's worse.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is maybe we need to start just stopping people and saying, you know, enough is enough. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to thank Amy for putting those numbers to get contact because of the trouble we get with calling Pinal County, calling DPS. If something goes on, we call, but it goes here, it goes there, and who's to say if somebody doesn't get killed somewhere else because we couldn't get nobody to go do something about it. So these are little things that I thank you for putting those. It was on Facebook. I don't have Facebook, my wife does.
You're very well informed for someone who doesn't have Facebook. Your staff is doing a good job.
Anyway,
AKA your family.
I'd like you to look into that, chief, you know, make sure that
Yes,
you know,
sir.
all these little things are out there to the public so we can at least do that.
A suggestion to staff would be an informational video would be this would be an excellent topic for it. How do you contact your police department?
Yeah, that would be an excellent example. Councilmember Lant?
I don't have anything to.
Councilmember Byrd?
Just adding to that, I think, you know, with people moving in new, they go on, they do a Google search, they look for something, and it has our business lines on there, so I think they confuse that there's somebody 24/7 staff there all the time, because a lot of agencies have that, even though a lot of agencies are moving to a centralized dispatch. So sometimes it's just getting the information out there to the newer people that come in because they don't know, and Pinal County's, not the 911, but the non-emergency still needs somebody to respond number is not a local number. So maybe that's something we can look at to see if they can integrate a 520-689 number that they can answer at that line.
What I'm hearing, since this is kind of agenda topics, is that you want me to put this on a future agenda for discussion. We continue to pay the price for eliminating our dispatch a decade ago, and we've got to look for better solutions to work around it.
I think what might be, because there's some of these things that we can't necessarily change because we want to change them, is maybe like a work session, even if it's a, 6:30, where we probably could meet our new officers, engage with the chief a little bit too in a work session. But I know these are becoming ongoing conversations that are happening out there and people not understanding. And so I think we do need to work on that. I think if there's maybe start working on those videos and stuff so we can get some feedback on that data, because I do think it's important. Thank you for bringing that up, council member. Did you have anything else?
Other than that, thank you to staff for the hard work and stuff that you do.
Yeah,
Keep the time running.
I just want to thank staff. I can say that probably for the last 3 weeks, there's been a lot of new uncertainties that we've been dealing with, not only monitoring our state legislature and managing what those potential impacts are, but even at the federal level. And I know sometimes it's easy to think here in Superior we're not affected by what's happening in the greater part, but for the record, Rebuild Superior had a $300,000 grant that has now disappeared. That was going to be addressing blight and the last bit of our blight list, which that becomes a health and human safety matter in our community that has gone away because it's part of environmental justice, because it was to support a community that was, maybe financially disadvantaged as well as had a majority minority population. So when we think about that these things don't affect us, it's already starting to affect us. And connected to that grant was a $1.2 million grant regionally that was going to go to Gila County that would have spread this work across the board. And so I think it's important that people understand, and we're waiting to hear how the rest of our federal funding works out. So we are being affected by a lot of these things, and we're seeing it in our business projects. The price of things are going up. And I'm not belaboring that for a political point, but there's some other stress points that our staff is having to face. It has been a pretty rocky 3 weeks, to be honest, for everybody managing that, in addition to all the projects all the other things that happen. So I really want to thank staff for bringing things, and I appreciate council very much, because I think everybody brings their A game to the meetings. You're listening to what's happening in the public, and we're all working together the best we can for Superior. So with that being said, Mr. Pryor, do you have anything else to add?
Do not, thank you.
Scheduling of meetings and events, emergency services is February 20th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Community Development Committee is February 27th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Planning and Zoning Committee is on March 6th, 2025 at 6 p.m. And our Town Council meeting will be on March 13th, 2025 at 7 p.m. With that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn? There's a motion by Councilmember Byrd. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Aguilar. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and we are adjourned at 8:17. This was a fun one. Discussion points,